In 1993, Anastasia Somoza, only 9 years old, visited the White House and shared with President Bill Clinton the disability challenges she and her twin sister, Alba, faced in school. Anastasia and Alba were born prematurely with cerebral palsy. Their mother is a pioneer in advocacy for children with special needs. In 2016, Anastasia Somoza, 33 years old, spoke at the Democratic National Convention with the same clarity and seriousness of purpose seen in public more than 2 decades earlier. Now a graduate of Georgetown University and the London School of Economics, Anastasia was there as a delegate for Hillary Clinton.
I first met Hillary as First Lady on a visit to the White House. I was 9 years old, and I listened to her and my mom discuss health care and early intervention for children with disabilities. Over the past 23 years, she has continued to serve as a friend and mentor, championing my inclusion and access to classrooms, higher education, and the workforce. She has never lost touch with people like me. She has invested in me, she believes in me, and in a country where 56 million Americans with disabilities so often feel invisible, Hillary Clinton sees me. She sees me as a strong woman, a young professional, a hard worker, and the proud daughter of immigrants. My father from Nicaragua and my mother from Ireland. She has shown me that all these aspects of my identity are strengths which will help me affect change. I fear the day we elect a president who defines being American in the narrowest possible terms, who shouts, bullies, and profits off of vulnerable Americans. Donald Trump has shown us who he really is, and I honestly feel bad for anyone with that much hate in their heart. I know we will show each other and the world who we really are in November when we choose genuine strength and thoughtful leadership over fear and division. Donald Trump doesn't see me, he doesn't hear me, and he definitely doesn't speak for me. Confident that as our president, Hillary will do everything in her power to promote the rights, empowerment, and humanity of all Americans. She knows that when we support access to education and employment opportunities for absolutely everyone, more of us will be able to live happy, independent lives, and to promote, build, and contribute to this great country. As president, Hillary Clinton will continue fighting and inspiring us all with her brave vision and tireless efforts on our behalf. On the eve of the 26th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, I'm proud to be with you, Hillary. Thank you for showing me how to live boldly with a courageous heart.
In this insider exclusive Justice in America Network TV special, American Disabilities Act, What You Need to Know, Ned Garneau will share some of the challenges he's had to face to make sure that the ADA regulations are implemented and disabled people are protected. Ned has been instrumental in working with many cities and private organizations to bring about positive changes to accommodate the disabled who are often neglected, especially when those entities were unwilling to improve access for disabled individuals. He will share his expertise on While it seems that there is a lot to know about the Americans with Disabilities Act, it is important to understand that people with disabilities deserve the same rights and treatment as those without disabilities. As an employer, educator, or business owner, it is also very important to be familiar with this act as well as with the other acts that protect the rights of the people you work with each day. Following this act is not only the law, but it helps to support those with disabilities in our communities. By guaranteeing them these rights, they can be an active part of communities, which makes them even better. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Boston, Massachusetts. It is my great pleasure to introduce Ned Garneau to the show. Welcome to the show, Ned.
Thanks for having me.
Beautiful day here in Boston, isn't it?
Not bad. We'll take it.
Okay. The reason we came here is because you do a lot of American Disability Act cases, don't you?
I do.
And why don't you tell our audience why, yeah, I know you do other things besides that, but why that particular area of the law interests you?
It's a discrimination type case when an ADA case is brought. Mm-hmm. Discrimination is it's a hot topic in our society. Yeah. And it's basically a segment of our community seeking inclusion.
Okay. So let me ask you this. There are on the books, I think since what, 1992, when George H.W. Bush signed into law the American Disabilities Act, right?
Yes.
There's on the books laws that private businesses, public entities have to follow. They don't, though, do they? Not always.
Not always.
And what are we talking about? Examples like wheelchair ramps, like bathroom assist, you know, that you see in bathrooms?
Yeah, it's generally what they're referred to as barriers and you know, items at a facility that would preclude a wheelchair patron or someone on crutches or with a cane from obtaining equal access into the facility. One
client of yours, Raul Murati, is a client that you work with quite a bit to try and teach, if you will, the public entities, the private businesses that have not had or violating the American Disability Act, what they should do. Give me some examples of what you and he have accomplished by settling cases, contacting them, because that's your first process, isn't it? You contact them by a letter, you're in violation of, right?
Sometimes there's a letter sent by the lawyer. Generally, there hasn't been too much success writing a letter. Generally, the business owner would tend to ignore it. Yes. Generally, if there's litigation, they're more apt to respond to it. The client, Mr. Murati, and other disabled clients that have brought cases have gotten some good results in terms of businesses being made more accessible.
Okay, what are some of the examples of some of the organizations that you've had to bring to court to correct their challenging situation for disabled people?
We had a case that we brought for a client who had trouble accessing a shopping plaza up near Lowell, Massachusetts.
What trouble did they have?
There was problems with the accessible parking, and there were problems with the curb cuts, and there were several big establishments like a shop, grocery store, a retail store, shoe store, liquor store, and especially when during the winter months with snow and ice, the client actually couldn't get up onto the curb and access the various storefronts. So we brought litigation on behalf of that client and ultimately the client, we were able to settle the case.
Now, when you say settle the case, does that mean that the defendant corrected the problem that existed?
Generally, the defendant will agree to make various renovations and remove barriers. Generally, the client gives the defendant a certain amount of time because it's a process to remove the barriers. They may have to get a permit.
Yeah, you mentioned in one of your cases that you sometimes employ an ADA consultant, right? Is that right? And these people are independent? These consultants are independent? They know the law? You bring them in a case because why?
Well, they're designated as an expert. This is somebody who's familiar with what the ADA is, what needs to be done. Can the defendant, business owner, do they have the resources to make the facility more accessible?
Right. When you look at all the lawsuits that you have brought to enforce the laws, what is the spectrum of typical reactions by business owners when you sue them?
I would say for the most part, the business owners have been cooperative. I mean, they most of them want to do the right thing. They want to, make the facility compliant.
They were unaware that it wasn't compliant?
They may have been aware, but they may have just put off doing what they needed to do. But generally, if there's a case, for the most part, they've wanted to comply and make the facility more accessible.
Right. What is the range of the cost of making a facility more accessible? What does that run from?
I mean, I would say it varies. It depends on the size and the scope of the work that needs to be done. I mean, there are smaller places, there are bigger places. The cost could vary from a few thousand to several $1,000s.
When you bring a defendant into court, do they usually settle the case before they get to court, or do some of them try and fight it tooth and nail? What's the response?
I mean, some of the defendants have moved to have the case dismissed, but for the most part, the business owner, the defendant, will get an attorney. They may get their own consultant. They'll take a look at the premises and then share with us what their thoughts or plans are in terms of making the facility more accessible.
For our audience, what exactly is the American Disabilities Act and why was it signed into law?
So it was signed into law so that places of public accommodation would be made accessible to those with disabilities, those that have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limit his or her daily life activities.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of businesses voluntarily, before they're even sued, if they're ever sued, just implement these changes for the disabled?
No, I would say no.
The reason I asked that is because I was reading prior to getting here that at one time Foxborough Stadium was one of the worst places that could possibly, for disabled people to go to watch a game. And yet Gillette Stadium, which was built after, a long time after, they take great pride in the fact that they're very compliant for disabled people, don't they? I was watching this. In fact, I think there was a lawyer and an ADA consultant that got involved with the design of the stadium.
I believe so.
Who does the American Disabilities Act apply to?
It applies to anyone who has a physical or mental impairment that would substantially limit their ability to participate in daily life activities.
What is a mental impairment what is specifically a mental impairment that the American Disabilities Act addresses?
Well, I mean, you could be talking about somebody who's visually impaired, or, they're deaf or hard of hearing. Mm-hmm. We've had cases where a business owner would put in closed captioning TV mm-hmm. or braille signage to make access better. There's been cases involving businesses wanting to preclude disabled patrons with service animals. Yeah. We're not letting you come in here with a dog, for example. Okay. And people have brought cases on for those reasons.
I would imagine some grocery stores would try to prevent that, right? Is that right?
Yeah, again, you know, sometimes there's letters written, but
A seeing eye dog, for example,
perfect
or a
example.
dog that is specifically helping somebody who has PTSD.
Perfect example. I had a client who came to a colleague of mine who was in housing and had a dog for companionship because she was PTSD and depressed, and housing didn't want her to stay there with the animal, and until she could verify through a physician's letter that the dog was in fact for her state of mental health.
You know, I think it's a difficult question, but I think a lot of people might ask this very same question, and it goes right in line with how do you select your clients, because a lot of people come to you with issues that may or may not be valid, okay? There's been accusations against some lawyers in regard to filing frivolous ADA lawsuits just to have them settle the case so they can make money, okay? For the public, the audience that is watching this, generally those cases are dismissed, aren't they? And if the lawyer keeps filing those kind of frivolous lawsuits, they might be disbarred, correct?
That's correct.
So when you take a case on, you look at the quality of the client. You know, who is this person? Is he a believable person, right?
Yeah, you'd want to spend some time with he or she before, you know, involving yourself in litigation with him or her. You want to have a good working relationship. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to trust them.
Let me ask you this question. We're from California, as you know, and there's plenty of private businesses that don't comply with the ADA requirements, right? So if I'm driving down the street and I see somebody doesn't have a wheelchair ramp when they really should, but I never go to that store, okay? If I tell you that, am I a good client?
You're not a good client, but if you tried to go there and you couldn't get in, I think that's the difference in what you're saying.
Right. In other words, a lot of the clients you take on do this for the public good, don't they?
Absolutely. You know, I've had one client. I've met with him. He said, "This isn't only for me. It's for all the people that can't get in." And there's a segment of our population that appreciates this work. There's certainly a segment that frowns on it, or they can make their statements or their pitch to the public or as to what the motivation behind this is. But I can assure you that there's people out there that are thankful for it.
Well, we thank you for doing this work, and I want to thank you for being on this show. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.